Greetings, this is Jim Lindsay. This is a CIS 141 SAM tutorial. Let's get started by logging into the SAM website. It's sam.cengage.com and log in with the username and password that your instructor gives you. This project will be over the Excel 1 project. So let's get into this. We're going to click on the hyperlink for Excel 1. And it will say you have 5 submissions. All right, because we have not done it yet. And as you can see, we only have 2 files to get, an instruction file and a start file. So click on the icons you see right there to download them. And I got them. They're on my machine now. You'll see one is a Word document, that's the instructions, and the other is an Excel file because we're going to be working with Microsoft Excel. So I'll go ahead and log out of SAM. I don't need that right now. And I'll open up my instructions and I'll open up my start file and then rename it. This is the instruction file. Let me zoom in there so I can read it a little bit easier. And the start file is right here. And if this is the application most students have very little experience with. In my experience as a CIS 141 teacher, many students come in and they've used PowerPoint, they've used Word in high school quite a bit, but very few have used Excel very much. And so welcome to Excel. I think of all the things we teach you, this is one of the most practical skills that you're going to learn. You can use it for many things, from very complex to pretty simple, but it's a very helpful tool regardless of which discipline you're going to be working in. I think you're very much going to enjoy Excel. And so as is the case with all of our projects, our first step is to rename the start file from a 1 to a 2. So let's get that done. I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'll just keep this on my desktop. I'll save my start file from my first last name to 1 to 2 and save. So this is now in a format which I can submit it. All right, so let's get started. So let's look at this case. And as you can see from the scenario that's presented to you, you work in an office and you use Excel to basically keep track of personnel data as well as calculate cash flow figures, and it's wonderful at that. Excel is a tool which allows us to perform arithmetic faster and more accurately than we can as humans. And so by all means, take advantage of this tool at your disposal. And so the first thing they want us to do is to start working with something called a worksheet. And so as you look at the file, what I hope you realize is the entire file, this whole npex19-1a big red 2.xlsx file is called a workbook. And a workbook is made up of individual worksheets. Think of a book that's made up of pages, right? Sheets of paper make up the book. And so what they want us to do from the instructions are saying, okay, go to the personnel worksheet in the workbook and then do something. So in the workbook, we've got the worksheet where you land is called documentation. We want to go over to personnel and we want to do some work in here. The first thing they want us to do is they want us to take the contents of a range, and a range is a cell or a collection of cells. And as you look at it, as you look at the environment here, as you look at the Excel screen, you'll notice an A, B, C, D, E, F, G across the top of the screen. These are your columns up here. Your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, on down to a gazillion down here on the left-hand side, those are called rows. So you have columns and you have rows. And when you have an intersection of a column and a row, you have a cell. And so you refer to the cell by the column letter first and then the row number second. So in this case, I'm at the Rosario Sprung cell. This is A8. This one over here where it says email is D4, and so on. So as you look at the instructions, and it says take the contents of B1 and B2 and move those over to A1 and A2. So as you look at the sheet here, essentially the title and the subtitle are one column off. They need to be moved over to the left. How do you do that? Well, you just select those, and I'm just left clicking on cells right now. If I want to select multiple cells, I just left click and hold and select both. So I've got both of those now. And just like you can cut and paste or copy and paste in Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint, you can also do that in Excel. So I'm going to just Control X, the control button and X. I'm going to cut that. Come over to A. This is A1 because I want it to go from B1 to A1. And I'll just paste it. That's Control V, as in Victor. So I've moved it over from B1 and B2 to A1 and A2. To do that again, you select what you want. Just left click and get that. And then you could right click and cut it. That's another way you could do it. Right click, cut. Come over here and then right click and paste. If you want to do it that way, that's fine. So we've completed that first step. We've gone through step number 1 and moved the content from B1, B2 to A1 and A2. Now, the next thing they want us to do, we want us to go over to column A and use AutoFit to make it look better. As you look at the material here, you'll see that personnel April 4 to 10 is kind of getting cut off. Looks like this Christopher Hernandez. This is being cut off, and the reason for that is that there's more stuff in this column than can be seen currently. So what you do is you have to make it wider. As you move your cursor up into the top of the screen, you'll see as you get between columns, it goes from looking like an arrow to having this line with arrows on either side, right? So what you can do, you can, if you left click and hold it, you can drag and make a cell, make a column wider or skinnier. And if you double click, it will automatically adjust to be as wide as whatever is the biggest thing in that column. So in this case, Tabula Insurance Agency was the widest thing, so it adjusted out to be that thing. Again, what I did was about here, you just double click between the A and the B. When your cursor looks like that, double click, and it adjusts to that width. So we've now completed step 2. In step 3, they want us to change the width of column B to 16. So what we do over here in the worksheet with column B, we select that column right there. You could even have a cell selected. You can select a column or a cell. I'm just going to go with this. I'll just go with the cell. On the home tab of the ribbon, this is the ribbon up here, the home tab. Over here on the right, you'll see an area for cells. So in the cells area of the home tab of the ribbon, you click on Format, and you can adjust things like column width. And so I want to be very specific. I want to make this exactly 16 characters wide or 16 points wide. So I'm going to click on column width. I'm not sure what that measure is. What the 16 refers to, I don't know. So I'm going to hit 16. I'll work on that. And so to get to you by the end of the video. So we've got column width of 16. Hit OK, and it adjusts for me universally across that column. All right, fun fact, I just looked it up. The width, when it says 16, that's talking about the default font 16 characters of the default font can fit into that column. That's what that's being measured. So we converted that guy to 16. Awesome. So let's get to step number 4. Enter the values shown in table 1 into the corresponding cells B14 through C16. So that's a range. B14 to C16. Look over here. Here's B right there. B14 is there. So they want those values shown right there to put into these cells right here. Let me get those where we can see those. All right, I just resized my screen so I could see the Word document behind for this step. And so I'm just going to type in these values: 846, 15, 846, 15, and 923 and 8 cents. And then for these values, we're looking at 22 cents. This would be $5.19. And then commission, Lillian got 0 commission. Now, I assume that this commission will be determined by some sort of formula. And so the fact that we're typing these numbers in here bothers me. Let me make that big again. If this were like really my spreadsheet for my job, what I would do, instead of having this number typed in here, I would have a formula in here, because I might mistype it. I might have meant 8362 instead of 8632. You know, it's a very human thing to do, to transpose numbers and make mistakes like that. So it's very easy to make the application do the arithmetic for you. And so that's, whenever you can, always use formulas. Always use formulas if you can, because it's going to do it more accurately and faster than you could. So the fact that we're typing numbers in here, we're having to do that because this is a SAM project. But in real life, I would more than likely have a formula in that column. Okay, back to the case. All right, so the next thing they want us to do is use something called flash fill, which is kind of cool. And so as we look at column D, part of this personnel information includes email addresses. So Albert Luna, for example, is in cell D5. Go to cell D5 over here, Albert Luna, and they want us to type that in, Albert Luna, and you'll see what it means is basically Albert.Luna's first last name at, and the name of the company. They're going to say Cengage.com because that's the publisher of the book. So we want Albert.Luna at Cengage.com typed in. So I'll type that in real quickly. By the way, if you haven't used Excel very much, many of you probably haven't. You just if you want something in Excel, you just click in it and you start to type. And so I'll actually do this where you can see it. So Albert Luna at Cengage.com right there. And so it recognizes that as an email address because it's an Office application, and Excel is good at recognizing certain sorts of things as email addresses or hyperlinks or dates, etc. And so it can format them accordingly. And so we have that entered as we're supposed to, but now what we're supposed to do, we're supposed to use something called flash fill to basically take this same scheme of Albert.Luna at Cengage.com and just have it automatically fill the rest of these in, because this one's going to be Trish.Marchin and Doretha.Blair and Rosario.Sprung at Cengage.com. So instead of having to type every one of those, let's use flash fill and have it do it for us. Okay, so where might you find that? Well, over here on the Home tab of the ribbon on the far right, you have an editing section. So the editing section of the Home tab, you've got a fill button, and there's a little down arrow that you can click. And there are different things you can do. You can fill down, right, up, left. Down at the bottom, there's something called flash fill. You select flash fill, and again, I have the Albert Luna Cengage.com cell selected. So if I hit flash fill, it's going to look at what's there and say, oh, I think this is what you want. And generally it gets that sort of thing right. Now you have to, every once in a while, you have to check it and correct it, but there you go. There's all those addresses that I didn't have to type, and flash fill did it for me. Now what you see here, this is called a smart tag, and these have been in office for a long time. But you'll see as I hover over the top of this, it says flash fill options. If I click on a little arrow here, I could undo that flash fill if that wasn't what I wanted, but I like what it did. I'm going to accept the suggestions and keep it. So when you see that kind of thing, sort of where you hover over the top of it and it gives you information, it's called a smart tag. All right, so let's move on to step number 6. They want us to change the width of column D to 36. We'll do that in just a moment, and we'll also enter the word total in A17. We'll probably actually do that first. So we'll put total in A17 and change the width of column D to 36. So let's jump back over to the spreadsheet. So A17, here's A17 with the word total down here. And they want column 7 here. By the way, I'm clicking every once in a while. I click in here and I hit one of these hyperlinks, and so it's opening up a browser on me. To format the column width, you saw this earlier. I'm going to go to Format, Column Width, and it wants to be, I believe it said 36. All right, so now we finally get to some math here, get some arithmetic, and don't let that bother you, don't let that scare you. Be glad about it, because it's going to be doing it a lot faster and easier and more accurately than we do. All right, so in B17, what we want to do is calculate the total number of money that we paid people in salaries. And so as we look at, so in B17, look at the worksheet here. This is B17. This is where we put the column or the totals for the salaries. So total salaries. So how do you do that? Well, you could just manually add all those up and type a number in, but that would be a bad idea. Instead, we're going to use something called a formula. We're going to use a formula, and there are things called functions, and functions are pre-built formulas. And so we're just going to come up here to the AutoSum area, and you'll see that there are different ones listed for us. These are some very common functions that are used, but these are pre-built formulas, and they're pretty convenient, because in this case I want to do some summing, I want to do some adding, right? So with the cell B17 selected, if I come up here to AutoSum and hit sum, it's going to look at that location and say, hey, do you want to add these things? Because this is right next to where you've identified this would make sense to me. Is this okay? And if you like it, you hit enter and accept it. So essentially the sum function adds things, and whatever is in the opening and closing parentheses here is what gets added. And so from the range B5 to B16, all those people right there, is going to add those together. So I like that. Hit enter, and that's the total amount of money paid in salary to those people. And again, a formula is, just like A plus B or X plus Y, what you're used to from your math classes. A function is a pre-built formula. And what I did not mention previously is that all formulas begin with the equal sign. This is one of the few cases where you can say always. Formulas always begin with an equal sign, and because functions are formulas, your functions always start with an equal sign. So when you type equals, you're essentially saying to Excel, hey, get ready, because I'm about to throw a formula at you. And then you can either just type in a formula, or which we'll do in just a minute, or you can give it a function name. And then these are also called parameters. Basically, these are things that we're telling it to do something to. And so equals, sum, and then in these parentheses, this range, B5 to B16, those are getting added up. Now, the next thing they wanted us to do in that instruction is to, again, sum these commissions. And so we could hit AutoSum. We could do it that way again. That's fine. That would work. What also you could do, though, is because you basically have that formula already there, we can also just copy that formula over to the next cell. And you could use like Control C and Control V to paste it. That would work. Or you could right click and copy it, and you could come over here and then right click and paste. If you wanted to do it that way, that's fine. That would work too. But what's also cool about Excel is this: if you'd like to copy something or duplicate something to the surrounding cells, what you can do is if you get to your pointer to the lower right corner, see how there's a big plus sign and then a little plus sign? As I get closer to that right corner, how it gets to a little plus, you just left click and drag, and it will do that duplication for you. And you'll see that in this case, the B5 to B16 became C5 to C16 because Excel recognized that I moved it over a column to the right. And this is called a relative address. We'll get to that in some later projects, but when you have an address that changes, when you have things that change because you moved right, left, up, or down, those are called relative addresses compared to things that stay anchored. Those are called absolute addresses. We'll use all of those in our projects. But so there you go. So we are now through step 8. Okay, so they want to introduce you to some more functions. And so in step 9 and 10, these are related. They want you to type the text number of employees in A19, and then right next to it, they want you to display the total number of employees. And the way that they do that, come over here to the worksheet, is this is A19. They want us to type the number of employees. And then in this cell right here, what they want us to do, they want us to basically use a function called count. And what count does, it does exactly what it sounds like. It counts something. And so because it's a formula, you always start with the equal sign. So we're going to use equal. You have to put the name of the function in there, and the name of the function is count. Note, as I start to type a bunch of possible functions, there are hundreds of these things in Excel. They're just everything from really simple stuff to super complex calculus kind of stuff is in here. And so you could search around seeing if the one that you wanted is in there, or I'm just going to continue to type. So I want the count function, and then if that's what I want, I'm going to then put my opening parentheses and say, okay, what do you want to count? And so I'm going to tell it to basically look at this range of employees here, because I assume, and somebody is not going to keep working for me unless I pay them. And so if there's a value in this salary range, in this salary column, I assume that that's going to be an employee. And is that kind of a goofy way to do this and count people? Yes. I think what might even be better is if you maybe counted for is there text present over here? Because what if somebody's on like sick leave or vacation or sabbatical or something like that, and they're still on the they're still in the books, but they're just not being paid right at this moment, or they just didn't do any work this month. So this number of employees, the purpose of it for this project is to teach you about that count. I'm going to hit F2 so you can see it again. So you can see that count function. But the way it works is you equals count, and then in the parentheses behind it, you put whatever the range is of things that you're looking for values, in which you're looking for values. So that's what you're seeing there. So we have 12 employees, and those are steps 9 and 10. Okay, so let's do step 11 real quickly and then jump over to 12. Okay, so they just want us to enter some more text. They want us to put in a label of average commission. This is what the spreadsheet is calculating in this particular location. So in A21, they want us to add average commission. So we'll do that. A21. Make sure you spell it right. That'd be an easy one to mess up on. But average commission, and if you look at the formula involved there, that's a function, the average function. What it's looking at is the average commissions. They're looking at all these commissions, adding those up, and then dividing it by the total number there. So all of those 533.73 divided by 12 is going to be that 44.48 for you. What's nice is this stuff is, it's dynamic. If you realize, oh, this guy actually made like 10,000 instead of what it was, all of this stuff is supposed to, and of course this isn't, so let's say instead of that, he made actually like 3,000 in commission. All these things automatically update because they're using formulas instead of hard-coded numbers, right? So you undo that one and undo that one. But that's the completion of step 11. And in step 12, what they want us to do, we're done with that worksheet. Now they want us to go to the next worksheet called cash flow. So again, the entire file is called a workbook. We've got columns and rows, and the intersection of columns and rows are cells. And so we're going to go from this worksheet to this other worksheet over here called cash flow, and they want us to work here. Okay, and so in this new worksheet that we've just jumped into, they want us to change the page orientation to landscape. It's currently at portrait, and what that means is when you print it, if it's portrait, it does things with the long side of the paper being up and down. If you're doing it landscape, it's it's longer in its width than it is in its height. And so the way that by default, it's by its normal behavior. That's what default means. But by default, what it wants to do is it's going to try and be portrait. And so if you want to check that over here in the application, you go to the page layout and you look at the orientation and how is this thing oriented. Well, currently it's portrait, and we want it to be landscape because if we send this to a printer, we want it to be wider than it is tall. And so we just, from the page layout tab, orientation, go to landscape and make it wider. So, and then you'll see a little dot, dot, dot show up right over here. And what this is, these are the page breaks. And so if we were to send this to a printer, you'll see that it's wider than it is tall. And so that's another way for you to discern whether you're portrait or landscape. So let me go back to the instructions. In cell A2, change the cell content to cash flow colon. So we just add cash flow colon space in front of the words that are already there. So April 4 through 10. So cash flow colon in here. A10. I think that what they want to get you used to is you can go into a cell and modify its contents. So to get that done, I'm just going to click up here in this little formula bar up here. Just click up in front of the A and type the content here. So cash flow colon space and hit enter. And so I didn't have to delete it. I could jump in there and modify it, without having to destroy anything. Our next instruction, we're in step 14. It wants us to do a little bit of formatting, and that's one point of it. But also what they want you to start practicing is working with non-adjacent cells, selecting more than, basically selecting a bunch of kind of weird cells, weird shapes of cells as opposed to just a single row or a single column or a box where everything is connected, because you can do all of those things. So they want us to get A4 through E4 and then G8. They want us to select that line of stuff and then that specific cell, and they're not next to each other. So let me show you what I mean. So A4 through E4, here's A4 and there's E4. So these guys right there, I'm just left clicking and holding. It wants all of those plus this one down here. Now if I hold down my left mouse button, and do that, if I try to get more than that, it's going to get all this stuff in the middle. I don't want that. I just want this line and just that cell. And so the way that you do that is you hold down Control. And so I'm going to hold down Control, And again, I'm just going to hold down. I'm going to select those guys, and I'll hold down Control and click on this guy. Because what Control will do, and I'm just going to start clicking around while I hold down Control, you'll see that kind of weird pattern I got. As you hold down Control, it allows you to select those individual things. I'll just click over here to deselect all of them. In contrast to that Shift, like if I select this one and then come down here and hold down Shift and then click, it gets, Shift gets everything in the middle, whereas Control will just do the individual things that you select. So holding down Control and then clicking to get your cells selected, that's what they want you to do. And then with those selected, they want you to just change the font size to 12. And so we'll go to the Home tab of the ribbon and the font area. We'll make all those have a font size of 12. So we are done with step number 14. All right. Number 15 is really easy as well. To better display the content, manually change the height of row 3 to 8. We've done this with columns a bunch of times, but not heights. Everything we were doing to columns you can do to heights. Column widths you can also do to column heights. So, or row heights, excuse me. So over here, this is row 3, and they want that to be 8 characters tall, or they want it to be a height of 8 as opposed to whatever it is now. So as we go to Format and look at the row height, it currently is at 16.25, and so they want that to be smaller. Make that 8, hit OK, and it sort of squishes that down to where there's a lot shorter row than what it was a second ago. And how I did that, just selecting a cell within that row or selecting the row itself. In Format, the row height, you go into the row height dialog box and type in the value that you want. In this case, we want 8. All right, in step number 16, they're getting us back to our true mission here with the spreadsheet. They're starting to calculate some more numbers for us. So what we want to do is basically figure out how much profit we made in sales. And so as you look at the spreadsheet here, you'll see there were sales and there were expenses, and so how much profit was made. Well, profit is calculated by subtracting your expenses from your sales, right? Because you made that much money, but you spent that much money in the process, so this is your profit. So we need a formula in here, and this is for in auto sales, an auto insurance sales, home insurance sales, and life insurance sales. So you want to have those 3 figures calculated as far as profit. And so to do that, we use a formula. Formulas always begin with what character? Equals sign. So equals, and in this case they want us to enter our own formula. In this case, what we're going to do, I'm just going to click on, I'm going to put the cell addresses of these different things we're working with. So I'm going to take, so equals means a formula, saying Excel, take whatever's here. So I clicked in B5 with my left mouse clicked into B5. I'm going to type the dash symbol, basically subtract minus, and then I'm going to left click right here in expenses. So if you looked at that, just as a human, you look at, okay, B5 minus B6, so I mean, you get that, right? So hit enter, and that tells me, it does the math for me. There was $4,229.22 of profit. And by the way, step number 20 is to zoom in to 130%. I'm going to do that now. Down in the lower right corner, you can zoom in. I'll actually zoom in more than that, just so you can see better. But so there we go. So, and we'll bring that back out to 130 in just a minute. But that's that formula, basically B5 minus B6. That's going to do that calculation for me. So that's what they're requesting in step 16, and then they want you to copy that same formula over to these guys. You already saw how to do that on the other worksheet, where we just get the pointer, the cursor in the lower right corner from a big plus to a little plus, and left mouse click and drag, and it copies that formula for us. It goes from B5 minus B6 to C5 minus C6, D5 minus D6, because those are relative addresses, and those adjust for us. And so that's really nice to have that ability to very quickly duplicate that formula across the cells. Okay, so let's get rolling with our next step. Our next step is 17. So now they want us to do, take what we've done already just a step further. We want to see the total sales, total expenses, and total profit. And in order to achieve that, they want us to use the AutoSum feature, which I showed to you earlier. So this time, though, they want to show you can actually use a range with it when you do it. So, for this range E5 to E7, and I'll select that there's E5 to E7. With that range selected, if I come up here to the AutoSum button and then click on AutoSum, it's going to go ahead and create that. And again, I get to choose whether I want to keep that or not. But yes, it's summed B through D on each of those rows, and that's what we're looking for in that step. So let me go ahead and save that. Okay, we're almost done. So in step 18, we just basically delete the contents of A9. As you look in A9, it says, hey, the last time this was edited was, at this particular date. So they just want us to delete that. It's kind of a silly instruction, but okay. So we've got that deleted. What would have been better there is you can use different functions to calculate date. And so what you could have done is you could have last edited on, and over here have the field for the function for today's date. And every time you went into or last modified, and have that actually keep track of that for you accurately. But that's not the point of the assignment. So we deleted the material in A9. So we've completed step 18. And now we want to apply wrapping text formatting to cell 8, G8. So if you look at this one, this is G8. What you can do when you have a lot of text to fit into a space, you can configure that cell or work with the properties of that cell to make sure that any sort of text wraps. And so let's do that. So I'm going to right click the cell and go to format the cells. Again, with this, they're talking about G8. I'm going to right click it, format cells, and it shows me the format cell dialog box. The one I want to work with, the tab I want to work with, is alignment. And there's this little box that you can check to wrap text. I'm going to tell it to wrap text. Okay. And in doing so, it lets that cell take that content and then break lines, and it adjusts the height for me as it makes it taller as needed, and it also makes it shorter as needed. So that is step number 19. Step 20 is to zoom to 130%. I showed you that a little bit earlier, so we'll go ahead and make that at 130%, which is right here. You see the minus sign and the plus sign. I've already zoomed to 170%, so I need to come out to 130. If you didn't do any of those modifications, you'd need to zoom in a little bit. But now I'm at 130%. I can tell that by looking down here at the zoom rate. I'll save it, by the way. And my last step is step 21, saying hey, when you do the personnel and cash flow worksheet, you typically generate additional data that you need for accounting, and so you need to have a worksheet to hold all that accounting data. So create a worksheet and call it accounting. And so we need to create a new worksheet and make sure that accounting worksheet is to the far right, or to the right of these two existing. So how do you do that? Easy enough. Over here in the workbook, down here at the bottom, we can see that it currently has 3 worksheets already: documentation, personnel, and cash flow. To get another one, all you have to do is just click on a little plus sign. Creates a new worksheet for you. And to rename it, you just right click where it says sheet 1, you right click, go to rename. And in this case, they want it to be accounting, ACC. There we go, accounting. And you just click up here in the worksheet somewhere, and there is your new worksheet. Now, if you created it and it was like somewhere over here, you can just left click and drag it to the right. What the order in which you want these is documentation, personnel, cash flow, and accounting. And the accounting one is not going to have anything in it. It's just going to be an empty worksheet, but create that worksheet and make sure that's to the far right. And I'm going to hit save. And we should be done with that assignment. So let me save it and close it. I'm going to save it and close it, and I will submit it to Sam. Okay, I'm back at the Sam website. I'm going to log back in. This is Excel 1, so I'll click on Excel 1. This is my first submission, so I still have the 5. And I'll click on here to get my file. And it is closed. Again, make sure it's closed. It's on my desktop. And I'll hit submit. All of those things checked out. That's fine. Go to, you can view my report. Let's see how we did. You'll see that it created a new worksheet, just like you learned how to do. I got 100 out of 100 on it, so that's good. Those are the steps, in what was correct or incorrect things would be identified with not a green check, and good. So that's the grade for Excel 1. Again, if you're at this screen and you want to see your all your reports, go to Activities, and then go to Reports. You can see all your work listed, all your reports listed there. So very good. Thank you for your time and attention, and good luck on your project.